Empires don't usually collapse in a single moment. They crack, fracture, and then suddenly, everything changes. In this video, we're counting down 10 moments that didn't just make headlines. They permanently reshaped the world we live in today. For centuries, Europe lived in the shadow of the Middle Ages. Knowledge was controlled, literacy was rare, and progress moved at a crawl. Art repeated tradition. Science obeyed authority. And few dared to question the world as it was. Then, in the late 1400s, everything changed. Ancient knowledge returned, creativity exploded, and humanity began to see itself and its potential in an entirely new way. This awakening became known as the Renaissance. These are the top 10 moments in history that defined it. The Fall of Constantinople. In 1453, the ancient city of Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Empire, marking the end of the Eastern Roman Empire. While the fall was a political catastrophe, it triggered an unexpected intellectual transformation. Greek scholars fled westward into Europe, carrying ancient manuscripts that had been preserved for centuries. These works, written by thinkers like Aristotle, Plato, and Ptolemy, reintroduced Europe to classical philosophy, mathematics, and science. The collapse of one empire became the catalyst for a rebirth of knowledge. Number 9. The rediscovery of classical knowledge. As ancient Greek and Roman texts spread across Europe, scholars began studying ideas that had been absent for generations. Education expanded beyond theology to include logic, rhetoric, astronomy, medicine, and history. This renewed interest in classical learning encouraged observation, debate, and independent thought. Instead of accepting tradition without question, people began asking why the world worked the way it did. That shift in thinking laid the intellectual foundation for the Renaissance. Number 8. The rise of merchant banking families. The Renaissance was fueled not only by ideas, but by money. Expanding trade routes created immense wealth for merchant banking families across Europe. Power began shifting away from feudal nobles and toward financiers who controlled commerce and credit. These families invested heavily in education, architecture, and the arts, using wealth as a tool to shape culture. Economic power became cultural power, and society began to transform. Number 7. Florence, the cradle of the Renaissance. Florence emerged as the epicenter of Renaissance innovation. Its wealth, political stability, and commitment to learning attracted artists, thinkers, and architects. The city became a place where creativity was actively encouraged and rewarded. New techniques in art, finance, and governance were tested and refined. What happened in Florence would soon influence the rest of Europe. Number 6. The Gutenberg printing press. In the mid-1400s, Johannes Gutenberg introduced movable type printing. Before this moment, books were copied by hand, slowly, expensively, and in limited numbers. Knowledge was confined to monasteries, universities, and the wealthy elite. The printing press changed that forever. For the first time, books could be produced quickly, accurately, and affordably. Ideas that once took decades to spread now traveled across Europe in years. Literacy increased, education expanded, and information reached people who had never had access to it before. The printing press did more than spread Renaissance ideas. It ensured they could never be controlled again. Number 5. Humanism takes hold. At the heart of the Renaissance was a radical new way of thinking known as humanism. For centuries, people were taught that their purpose was fixed, defined by birth, tradition, and authority. Humanism challenged that idea. It emphasized human potential, reason, ethics, and individual achievement. Scholars studied history and literature not just to honor the past, but to understand what it meant to be human. Education shifted from memorization to inquiry. People were encouraged to think, question, and participate in shaping their own lives. Humanism didn't just influence art and education. It redefined how people saw themselves and their place in the world. It became the philosophical backbone of the Renaissance. Number 4. Patronage transforms art. Renaissance art flourished because it was supported, deliberately and strategically. For centuries, artists were treated as skilled laborers, bound by strict traditions and limited resources. Patronage changed that. Wealthy families, religious institutions, and rulers commissioned paintings, sculptures, and architecture on an unprecedented scale. In return, artists were given time, resources, and freedom to experiment. Innovation was no longer a risk, it was expected. Skill became reputation, and artistic vision became a source of prestige and power. This support elevated art from decoration to cultural expression, and the masterpieces created during this period continue to define Western art today. Number 3. Leonardo da Vinci redefines genius. Leonardo da Vinci embodied the Renaissance ideal. He was not just an artist, but an inventor, anatomist, engineer, and visionary. At a time when disciplines were kept separate, Leonardo ignored the boundaries entirely. He studied the human body, nature, and machines with relentless curiosity. To him, art and science were not opposites. They were inseparable. Leonardo proved that observation, imagination, and reason could work together. He became the living example of what human potential could achieve when curiosity had no limits. Number 2. Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel. When Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling, he redefined artistic ambition. Working under immense physical and emotional strain, often alone and under constant pressure, he transformed a vast ceiling into a vision of humanity, faith, and power. The work demanded technical mastery on an unprecedented scale, but its impact came from something more: its raw human emotion. The Sistine Chapel was not merely a religious achievement, it was a declaration of what human creativity could endure and accomplish. Few works of art have ever matched its influence. Number 1. The Renaissance did not remain confined to Italy. Its ideas crossed borders, reshaping Europe's understanding of science, religion, politics, and culture. Humanist thinking challenged long-standing authority. New methods of inquiry fueled scientific advancement. What began as a rediscovery of ancient knowledge became something far greater, a transformation of how people understood the world and their place within it. The Renaissance did not simply change art or philosophy. The Renaissance changed the course of history. The Renaissance reshaped how humanity understood art, science, and itself. Its influence still surrounds us in how we learn, create, and question the world today. What began as a rediscovery of the past became a blueprint for the future. If you enjoyed this countdown, consider subscribing for more moments that shaped history.